Hey, what is going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and in this video here, we're actually going to be revisiting something that I have covered several years ago. However, I would say the old guide I've made on this is long deprecated. Although these steps are still mostly the same, there's a few new things to look out for, and there's just more things that are streamlined, improved, and just overall better. But in this video here, I'm going to be showing you all, if you have a jailbroken PlayStation 4, how you can take some games such as these ones right here and convert them to fake package files, allowing you to take your own games, whether they are digital or disc-based games. You can take those games, you can back them up yourself, and then you can repack them to really play them, for example, without a disc. But this way, it really allows you to actually back up what you have and own the games that you have paid for. So here, for example, you could see this is Maneater. It is a legitimate game, but I have to insert a disc to play it. Same thing with Days Gone. Now these games are installed, but I still need to insert the disc as usual. But by the end of this video, you're going to see that I'll be able to play those two without a disc, and one more that I'm going to show as a demonstration. Now as usual, I do like to give credit where credit is due here, and this is really going to be a visual adaptation of the console mods page for ripping PS4 game backups. They did a great job writing this up here and breaking down the process on this, so if there's anything you want a little more granularity on, if there's any extra details you're wanting, or if there's something that maybe you might be a bit confused on and you just need to see it in text, this page will have you covered, and I'll have it linked down below in the description. But this is essentially going to be a visual adaptation of this guide with a few other additions here, because there were a few things I found that just didn't really work until I had to change or configure a few things. I'll show you once we get into the video. Getting into it though, you are going to need a few things. First of all, you must have your PlayStation 4 already up and running and jailbroken. I do have several videos showing how to do this here, and it doesn't really matter which jailbreak you're using. I'm personally using View After Free, but as long as you can get a jailbreak running on your system, you should be in good shape. Secondly, you also do need to have a game or games that you want to back up. So for example, these two games I've already backed up and I'll be discussing, but I'll actually go ahead and load up the game I want to back up on video. I've just loaded up the disc here. Now this is one of my all-time favorite games and also a quick one here, so it should thankfully be easy enough to work with, but right here, Untitled Goose Game. You do need to take your game and you need to make sure it is installed, but on top of that, you also need to make sure it's playable. Since this one is pretty quick, let's go ahead and wait for it to finish up. So there we go, it's been installed, and as an example here, I can go ahead and fire this up, which I would recommend any game you're wanting to back up, make sure you can run it at least once, because that's an important thing. The game has to be runnable. But you can see here, we got past that, everything else is loading, and at this point here, yep, I would say we're in a good spot and this is working successfully. So as long as the game you've installed is able to boot up and work properly, you're in a good spot here. Additionally, we're also going to need a USB drive in order to back up the game and reinstall it, and we're also going to need a computer to actually do the process of getting this game converted over. Because you see, unfortunately, just dumping the game is not going to be enough. We do have to reinstall it as a fake package file. And doing that means we essentially need to take our data, decrypt it, and then repack it into a decrypted package that can then be installed and read on a jailbroken system. So with all that out of the way, the very last things you'll need here on the system itself are going to be an internet connection if you want to download any patches for your game, and you're also going to need this application here, Itemzflow or Itemzflow Game Manager, in order to actually dump the game itself. So let's go ahead and work on this here. First things first, we are going to need a USB drive. Now keep in mind that PS4 games can be quite large. For this here, I'm just using a 32GB drive because I know that the game I'm installing is quite small, so that shouldn't be an issue. But the drive must be exFAT file system format right here, so if it's already exFAT, great. And if it's not, you're going to have to back up any data you might care about, right click, format, default allocation is fine, quick format's fine, hit OK. And there we go, we can double check it here, but it should be all good to go. So once we have that all set up with exFAT, we can go ahead, eject our USB drive, now take it back over to the console and plug it in. Now back over at the system, if you've never used Itemzflow or you do not have it installed, I'll go ahead and show you how to do that. If you follow my previous jailbreak videos, I've shown how to use the homebrew store, and it's one of the first things I recommend installing on here, so make sure your system's connected online, and then open up the homebrew store. And now right here, thankfully it is one of the featured store apps, but over on the front page here, we can just go over to Itemzflow, open this up, and we're going to download and install this. Just go ahead and give it a few moments. And there we go, installation is complete. We now have it saying it's ready to use, so we can now exit out of the store, and as you can see right here, we do have Itemzflow available. Now do keep in mind, in this example here, I'm going to be dumping Untitled Goose Game, and for your game, there might be some updates or patches that you might want to dump alongside this as well. So if you're wanting to dump those and download the latest patches, we can do that, but if you have any DNS blocking rules set up, we are going to have to disable those temporarily. Now keep in mind, since right now I'm using a gold hen, or you might be using a regular hen, but whichever it might be, once you are in a jailbroken state, typically system updates are disabled while it is running. So I'll show you before the video is over how to revert that. But all you need to do is go up here, go over to your settings, go to network, go over to setup internet connection, use whichever option you're using. I'm going to be sticking with a LAN cable, and instead of doing a custom setup, we're going to do an easy setup. Once that's all done, it's going to check our network environment. And there we go. We don't have to test this here, but it might tell you to update the system software. Don't worry about that, it is going to fail out. Now even we can check this by going up here, going over to notifications, we got all that. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this one just to get it out of the way. But you can see here that there's no downloads that are going for these system updates, and even if there is one, it will be blocked. But we do have to disable any type of DNS blocking in order to download a game patch. So for that, once we have this all set up, make sure you have your actual game that you want to dump installed. Again, make sure it is running like I showed earlier, and then open up Itemzflow. Now once you open this up, it will ask you if you want to download covers. I'm going to go ahead and say yes, and let it download. And here we go. Once it all loads up, it should look a little something like this. So we just need to navigate through our apps, and we need to find the game that we're wanting to dump. Now you could also see which ones are retail or which ones are fake. For example, let's say Days Gone. You could see at the top left where it has the game name, it also has the actual ID, the version number, and it shows that this is a retail game. But if I pick another game, like let's say this one's pretty obvious, but like Silent Hill, this one shows it is an FPKG, so it does show the differences there. But now you just need to find the game you're wanting to dump here. If it is a disc-based game, make sure you have the disc actually inside the system itself, and then tap X on the game. Now right here, we can go over to the retail game updates and tap the X button yet again. It's going to look for the updates here, and there's going to be a few updates that you could cycle through. Now this is important because you could see here up in the top left, I do have the title of the game, I also have the title ID of the game, and I have the version number, which is 1.01 on the disc. But there's two patches which are available. The second one is 1.02, and this is also important to pay attention to because you see there's some green text right here that shows this update supports your firmware. So for example, my system is running firmware 9.00, so I cannot install an update if it requires firmware 10.00 right off the bat. It needs to be backported, but just a standard retail update, it can install, but it cannot play properly. So really, in short, you just need to make sure that the update you're downloading is actually supported on your firmware. I'll show you an example of this if I actually go back to this game here, Days Gone, and I go over to the retail game updates. The latest one here you can see is not compatible with my system. So just make sure if you're downloading an update, it must be compatible with your firmware version. With that though, I'm going to go back over to Untitled Goose Game, go to the retail updates, and since there is one I want to download, I'm going to select 1.02 and tap the X button. And you can see here, it's now going to add it to our downloads. I'm actually going to exit out here, go up to notifications, and you can see right here, it is downloading. So I'm just going to give it a few moments to do this. Alright, so we're nearly at the end here. It downloaded and it installed, so we should be in a better spot at this point. Now, another thing you can do before you start dumping your game is go over to your settings, and we're going to have to tweak some of our power settings. We don't necessarily have to do this, but it would at least be recommended to do so. Go to your power saving settings, and from here, go to set time until PS4 turns off. And change both of these if you're going to be dumping some games to do not turn off and do not turn off. The reason why I suggest this is because some of these games are quite large, can have a ton of files, and if you have it set to like, let's say 20 minutes, the system could turn off while you're dumping the game, which you don't want that to happen. So once we have that all set up here, we have our game patched up and ready to go, we can go back into Itemzflow. Now once you're ready to actually dump your game, navigate over to your game itself like I have, go over to the dump option and press the X button. Now you're going to have several options that are available here, and cycling through them we have dump all, which ends up dumping the game, any available patches, and any loaded DLC. We also have dump all plus GP4FV. We're not going to be using that one though. We have one that only dumps the base game, so this one here would only dump the game on disk. We have dump patch only, which only dumps the patch file that we downloaded. We have dump remaster only, which ends up dumping remastered packages. I'll come back to this one here. And lastly, there's also dump DLC only, which is downloadable content. Now, before we start dumping a game here, I do want to harp on this dump remaster only option. This one, it says here, it dumps only available remasters. And you all might be a little bit confused if you haven't heard that before, which is totally understandable. We're not talking about remastered games like HD remasters or games such as The Last of Us remaster, games that have been re-released and remastered. No, we're actually talking about specific builds of games. You see, there's several games such as Untitled Goose Game, Man-Eater, maybe even Dead Rising that are just typical games that are deployed and installed. However, there's some games like this, for example. Days Gone is one of them, and there's two other games I know of off the top of my head. I believe one of them is the Spyro Trilogy, and another one is also No Man's Sky. They have certain patch updates, which we can load this up here, and you can see several of them, like the first patch for this is 18 gigabytes, but if we look at the more recent patches, they're like 35 gigabytes. And these patches here, I'm highlighting this because these are not only content that are being added in. These have essentially been remastered, and what I mean by that is they have quite literally rebuilt the entire game and they've issued it as a patch. Now, games do not openly advertise this, so if this is the first time you're hearing about it, surprise, but that's something that's been going on here. But like I said, so for example, Days Gone, even though I have it from disk, the disk build is no longer being used anymore. If you end up installing one of these updates, you are effectively updating the game and even replacing the base game because the game has quite literally been rebuilt in an entire patch. Now, one way I've noticed at least to detect and sniff out if a game that's been patched is a remaster or not is quite literally just trying to dump the patch itself. In this example, you can see I have Days Gone 1.8 installed, but if I go over to dump and I select, let's see, patch only, tap the X button, it says no patches available, even though I do have a patch installed right there. But if I try to dump the remaster, it will work. However, I'm warning you here on this, do not dump the remaster only. This part I'm going to show you hung me up a little bit here. If you have a remastered game and you try to dump the remaster only, when you go to repack it, even if you follow the instructions on how to repack this game, it ends up failing. I notice it failed every single time for me and I could not dump this to a fake package file. However, what I've noticed for me is if you're dumping a game that has a remastered patch applied to it, go to the dump section and dump base game only. When you dump the base game only, it ends up dumping the entire game with the update, and from there you can actually rebuild it properly. So hopefully that saves you all some time and some headache. Like I said, if you have a remastered game, do not do dump remaster only, just dump it as dump base game only. It will dump the game and the patch since they are technically combined into one at that point. I will show how to build remastered packages as well. Hopefully that helps you out if you have a remastered game though. But like I said, we're going to be going back to Untitled Goose Game, so navigate back over to the game you want to dump, and from here, go to the dump section. Now go ahead and pick which option you're wanting to use. For this, since this is not remastered, you can dump the base game only, you can dump the patch, or you can dump the DLC if you have any DLC installed on the game. Since this is a game with a patch, I'm actually going to do dump all, and it's going to dump them into two separate directories. So select your option, and then tap the X button. And like I said before, if you have a disk-based game, you're going to want to make sure the disk has been inserted. Now it's going to do a little something like this, where it's going to boot up the game and then suspend it, and it's going to bring you to this option here, asking if you want to do a sandbox copy. It does a great job of explaining why you might want to do a sandbox copy and what exactly it is. But before you say yes to this, I'm going to show you all something. Currently, we're using Itemzflow 1.07, and it's actually been noticed and open as an issue on the GitHub repository for Itemzflow that if you're using 1.07, it actually has an issue when dumping games using sandbox mode. Now, it's not every single game, but you could see here some folks, for example, are able to dump a few games without issue, and then some of them end up failing. So it really depends on the game and the build that you might be dumping on here. But unfortunately, I'm sharing this because sandbox mode might be a little bit inconsistent. However, when you dump a game, it will tell you if it was successful or failed by the end of it. So I'll put it like this, you can use either option on here. If you want to go ahead and say yes to dumping via sandbox mode, you're more than welcome to do that, and if it works for you, wonderful. If you try to dump a game and it does not dump successfully, you're going to have to try this again and just say no to sandbox copy. I'm going to say no to this here, load it up, and this is how it should look. Now you can see here, once it starts dumping the game, this one here is thankfully pretty quick, but once you select it, it should start dumping the game, and it will dump every single individual file to your USB drive. Just go ahead and wait a few moments. Depending on the size of your game and your drive and everything, this could take a few seconds, a few minutes, or a few hours. Now thankfully, pretty much while I was talking, this ended up completing. At the end here, it's going to ask, do you want to generate a GP4? And you're going to want to say yes to this. Now once you do this, this could take, yet again, either a few seconds or a few minutes. Just wait for it to finish up. And now it's doing this again because with this option here, we just ended up dumping the base game, and now we're going through and dumping the game patch. If you're doing that here, just wait a few moments for this to finish. And here we go, yet again, for our patch or any DLC, it's going to ask to generate a GP4, just say yes yet again. And at the end here, check it out, it should tell you what the status of, and it says that this dump is complete without errors. So with that all done, we can hit OK. We can now go ahead, close out of Itemzflow. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and eject this as well. Let me go ahead, close this game and remove disk. So that way you're going to see here shortly, we're not going to need the disk for Untitled Goose Game. Now with all that done, disconnect your USB drive and take it over to your computer. I'll show you how to then repack this game into a backup. For this here, what I'm going to be using and demonstrating will be PS4 Fake Package Tools 3.87. This was provided by CYB1K. In order to get the download here, you can just navigate over to the releases page. And once this loads up, go ahead and download the latest build available. Now, if you need any help extracting this archive, I'm also going to have a link to 7-zip down below in the description of this video. You can just go ahead and go to the download section here and then download and install this like any other application so you can extract out that archive. Now, should all be in this one package right here, but I'm going to right click this and extract it into its own folder using 7-zip. Once extracted, it's going to give us a new folder right here. Just go ahead, open this up, and it's going to have a lot of applications that you can check out here. Now do keep in mind, before we open this here, we can go ahead, go back out here, and you can see in our USB drive, there's going to be several folders and files. There's going to be this Itemzflow folder, which we don't need to concern ourselves with, but there's going to be 2 .complete files. And this is just going to signify the success rate of each of these. You can see the base application, which is CUSA 23079, has been dumped. And you can also see the patch right here, which is, well, the patch that we end up downloading and installing. Now, we don't need these 2 complete files, so as long as you understand they're complete, we can delete them. And as for these 2 folders, you could either keep them on the USB drive or you can move them to your computer, whatever you're wanting to do. If you're going to repack these quickly into a fake package file, you don't necessarily need to move these off the USB drive, so you can save a little bit of storage space there. The second thing is going to be to look at your drives right here. Now by default, this is going to be on your C drive, and there's going to be a lot of temporary storage that's going to be needed. Now since this is like less than a 2 GB game, I'm not too worried about this, but some PS4 games might be very large, 20 gigs, 50 gigs, 100, 150 gigs, and that's a lot of data to repack and copy and do all of that. So what I'm saying here is if you don't have that much space on your C drive, or you just don't want to use the write cycles on your C drive, you can actually redirect this to run on another drive temporarily. For this here, you can open up the PS4 Fake Package Tools, and there's going to be a batch file right here, which is temp folder patcher.bat. In order to utilize this, go ahead and double click it. It's going to bring this up right here, and you can choose any of these options, or you can create a custom location where you want essentially your work to be done. Now the only heads up on here is with whichever folder you choose, you need to make sure that folder and that drive location exists already. So for example, if I pick number 2, it's going to try this out, but you can see right here when the fake package generator comes up, it tells me that the specified path does not exist. However, if I do create it and I select that option, check it out, it says starting Orbis PubGen, and then right over here, it brings this up. So when you open this up here, this exact instance is going to use that temporary folder. But when you close this out, it will no longer save that setting, which means in order to use it again, you're going to have to open it up from that bat file. Completely up to you if you want to change that, but that's just some information I'm putting out there. Now, before we start utilizing everything here, real quick, if you have a remastered version of a game like I talked about earlier, there's going to be one extra step you need to take. let's go ahead and knock that out here. I've hooked up another drive, and on this drive here, I already have a few games that you can see I've actually created packages of, but I've dumped Days Gone and Maneater. What you want to do is find the folder for the remastered game you dumped. Yet again, like I said, you do not want to dump it as a remaster. What's worked for me is dumping it as a base package. So go into that folder, I have it right here, and within the games folder here, go to the sce_sys folder, and you're going to look for a file called param.sfo. You can double check this by, if you're using Windows, click on View, Show, File Name Extensions. And when you see this param.sfo, I'd recommend you copy it out and you just make a backup of it right here. From here, I'm even going to go so far as to rename this. I'll just call this param.sfo.original, something like that. That way, in case we have to restore that, we can always do so. With that done, we can close out of here. Now go to the PS4 fake package tools, and the application we need to open is Orbis Pub SFO. When you open this up here, it's going to bring up the param file editor for PS4. You're going to want to click on File, and click on Open. Now go ahead and navigate over to your drive or wherever you have your game. Mine is in the H drive, Days Gone, Base, sce_sys, param.sfo. Now when you open it up, it should look a little something like this. And the instructions, if you're going off of the console mods wiki, for example, say that you need to uncheck for the remaster package. That is important. You just need to uncheck that. However, there's two other things I found that you also need to edit here. You're going to see the master version or version right here and the application version or app ver. These two need to be changed, and I noticed at least I could not get this package to compile until I changed these options. So for here, essentially, you just want to swap these around. So what I'd recommend is highlight the application version. We're going to cut it out, and from here, we're going to put that into the version itself. And now in the app version, we're going to change that to 1 or 01.00. Once that's all done, like I said, application version must be 1.00. The master version must be what the original application version was, and make sure for the remaster package is unchecked. From here, we can now click on File and Save. It is going to give you an error right here, but just hit close and then we can close out of here. And that is what you need to do for a remaster package. So as long as you've got that knocked out, you can now continue on with the rest of this video. Now to actually get our fake package files created, let's first work on the base package. For this, we'll need to open up Orbis Pub Gen. Like I said, if you want to redirect the folder, you're going to have to run this temp folder patcher.bat. Otherwise, if you just want everything to run on your C drive, you can open up Orbis Pub Gen. It will look like this. We can go ahead and close out of here. And from here, we just need to click on File, Open, navigate over to where you have your game dumped. So I'm going to go into the USB drive here. And now the one that is just the game ID itself is going to be the base game. And if it has patch, it's going to be patch. Pretty self-explanatory. Let's build the game itself. Navigate in here, and you're going to see a GP4 file. Go ahead and open up that GP4 file. Now once that's open, we're going to click on Build. It's going to give you a message about file compression here. You can click on Close, and then it will give you some instructions for building the image. The only thing we care about is this top option right here, and then the output path. Go ahead and click on Select. Now you need to pick where you want to save this to. You could either save it back to the USB drive itself, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I'd recommend saving it somewhere on your PC first, and then you can copy it over to the drive once it's done. I just created a folder on my desktop for Untitled Goose Game, and yeah, you could see right here, you can actually change the file name if you want to, but I just find this hilarious. The actual developer package name is honk 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 honk. I did not change that at all, so I'm going to keep that the same. But once you figure out where you want to save it to, hit Save, and now hit Build. And at this point, it's now going to go through this process. You could see it's writing the internal image, and you're going to see a few debug strings, and you're also going to see some warnings right here. If you want to read through these, that is totally fine, but as a general rule of thumb, warnings are okay, but any kind of errors that you have, if it's all in bright red and it says it's an error, those ones will not allow you to build the game properly. So you do not want errors, but warnings are going to be okay. Either way, you could see while I was talking, this ended up completing. So once that's done, we can close out of here, and check this out. We now successfully have rebuilt our copy of Untitled Goose Game. So congratulations, you've now been able to back up your game, repack it into a fake package file, and once we reinstall this, it will be playable. Now the good news is here, we've dumped the game successfully, But we also need to dump out the patch, so I'm going to show you all how to do that. Do keep in mind, however, if you have a remastered version of a game, you're not going to have this patch folder. You're just going to have a single application folder, and when you repack that, it's going to contain the actual game along with the patch that was dumped and merged into it. So you don't have to do this next step. You should already have a patched, rebuilt version if you have a remastered version. However, if you're like me and you just have the application right here, the base version of the game, but you need to create a patch, we can go ahead and do that. Let's close out of here. We're going to open up our PS4 fake package tools. And yet again, we're going to open up Orbis PubGen. Now within Orbis PubGen, click on File, click on Open, look for where you've dumped your game. I'm going to go to the USB drive, the patch folder, and then open up the GP4. Now you'll notice this is a patch because right here it shows Project Patch Package. But there's going to be a setting we need to check right here. You'll need to find the settings gear to the left and click on it. And from here, go to the Patch tab. Now within the Patch tab, you're going to go to the Application Package, and click on Select. From here, you need to find the game package that you just created. Since mine is right here, go ahead and select that, and then hit OK. That's really all you need to do. Outside of that, once it's complete, you need to click on Build, make sure Build Package File has been selected, and now click on Select for the output path. Just like before, it will give you an auto-generated name, and you can see from the differences here that the base version of the game is application 1.00, this one is application 1.02. So as long as the file names are different, we're in a good spot. Go ahead, pick where you want to save this, typically next to the actual game itself, click on Save, and click on Build. You'll know this works successfully because, well, it is going. There should not be any errors, it's just going to give you some debug strings, some warnings, and once that's all done, we can wait a few moments. And there we go. At the end, it should say create image process finish with warnings. But like I've said, the warnings are totally fine. It's just the errors are not going to work for us. We can click on close out of here. And if it's asking to save any changes, we can just say no to that. And at this point, come back out here and check this out. We now have a few files. We have our base version of the game, we have our patch, and we also have a compare delta log right here. We don't need the log, so if you want to delete it, you can, but there we go. We've successfully been able to back this up and repack it, so we now have our own proper backup. Now this last part here is going to be the fun part. We now actually get to take all the files we created with our work, and we're going to install them back onto the system. So find your packages, go ahead, select them, right click, copy, and plug in a USB drive for your PS4. Like I said, it will need to be exFAT and file system. This one I already have a few games I want to reinstall, but navigate to your USB drive, and like any other package file, just right click and paste these into the root of your USB drive. And here we go. Once that's all completed, we can exit out of here, eject our USB drive, and now take it over to our PS4. Back over at the PS4, go ahead and plug in your USB drive, but let's also reset our DNS settings because I did have a DNS blocker on here, and let's go ahead and re-enable that. As long as you're done downloading patch updates, you can go ahead and follow this. Navigate over to your settings, go down to network, go to set up internet connection. This time around, go ahead, pick the option you're using, but we're going to pick custom instead of easy. IP address settings is automatic unless you want to set them manually. DHCP do not specify. For our DNS settings, this is the one we're going to be changing to. This one here on screen will essentially block Sony servers, so that means any type of connectivity with patches, with system updates, any of that stuff is going to be blocked. And if this DNS does not do the job for you, you could also try to change this setting to 127.0.0.2. That way you will not be able to access the internet at all, but you can still access your console on your own network. Go ahead and hit done. We're going to go to next, automatic, do not use, test internet connection, and as long as we get an IP address, we should be in a good spot. There we go, successful, we're all good at that point. So now with that, we are ready to actually reinstall our games. Now you can see here, I already have a few of them, but check this out, I'll show you. Untitled Goose Game, we do need a disc. We can also try this with Maneater, same thing, and even Days Gone, the same thing. But we're going to change that here in a bit. The first thing we do need to do, however, is actually delete these original retail packages. In order to do that, you can highlight the game itself, tap the options button on your controller, and go down to the delete option. Do not use the delete with the star if you have that enabled, just use the standard delete option. And go ahead, hit OK. It's just going to delete the application data, but it will not delete your save data if you do it like that. I'm going to do the same thing with Maneater, not that. I need to do this here, delete, and OK. And the last thing is going to be Untitled Goose Game. And don't worry, we're going to see these games here again very soon. Now once those are all cleared out, we just need to navigate back up here, go to Settings, go all the way down to Debug Settings, Game, Package Installer, and right here you should see all the packages available. Now in order of installation, you're going to want to install the base version, so the one with A0100. You're going to want to install the lower version first, and then you're going to want to install the higher one on top of that, because for Maneater, this is the base version, this is the patch. For Untitled Goose Game, this is the base, this is the patch. And for Days Gone, this here is all in one, because you could see here, this was a remastered game. So since I want to reinstall all of these, I'm just going to go to Install All, and wait. At this point, you can now just put down the controller and wait for everything to complete. Alright, and it took a bit, but as you can see, that is all complete there. So once that's all done, you can now remove your USB drive, exit out here, and check this out. There's a few of them available. You might also notice right off the rip that none of them have the disk icon on them. So let's go ahead and use Untitled Goose Game as an example. Since this is the one that I already tried, I booted up, I installed it, and this is what I used for the entire tutorial. You can see here it's opening up here. There we go, it's loading in. We should be in a good spot, and check this out. I can even show, yep, there we go. It has 2-player, so that was also the important thing with getting the patch on here. The latest patch for this game ended up enabling 2-player on here. Let's go ahead, set this up, let it load in, and you can see here, I don't have any progress on this system at least, but it is working, it's running, and it's still funny. So there we go. Untitled Goose Game is now working without a disk. We can exit out of here. Let's go ahead and try the same thing with Maneater. So that's now closing out. That one opens up. Let's give it a few moments. And here we go. Now this one here, I am skipping forward a little bit because I did have a save right at the beginning of this game. So I just want to show you all that it is able to retain the save. Yep, there we go, right at the beginning. So let's go ahead, load that up. And you can see here, one nice benefit is that our save is working from the retail build of the game to the fake package version of the game. The last one we can try here is Days Gone. So I'm going to go ahead, close out of here, fire that up. And here we go, we have our frame per second counter. It will take some time to load in here, but you can see that I've been able to load all these games back to back to back without having to swap out discs, without having to do any of that extra stuff. But you can see here that we've now been able to successfully back up, repack, and now play our game backups on our system. That way we can keep the originals safe, put them on a shelf somewhere, don't really have to worry about that as much. Plus, we only needed to install this game one time, thankfully. You know, I really forgot how long this game takes to load in here, but you can see here I have continue available, so this is also able to retain my save. I am highlighting that, and that is important because years ago when I ended up covering this process, you weren't able to retain your saves just yet. But now, thankfully, after some changes that were actually made several years ago now at this point, your saves from the retail build of the game do also work on the fake package build of the game. So congratulations, that is how, like I said, you can now take your games that might have been from disk, that might have been already digitally installed, and this way you can take your game data, you can decrypt it, you can back it up, and then you can repack it into a fake package file, so that way you actually have a backup of your game that you have, you can keep your original safe, and you can always refer back to this backup here and enjoy it on a jailbroken PlayStation 4. Either way, that is about it for this video here. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully it helped out. Hopefully you were able to get some of your games situated here and now have a bit more fun with your PlayStation 4. But that's about it for this video. This is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone. If you liked this video, a like would absolutely be appreciated, and if you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too.